Okay, number 3, give it a read. Pause the video. All right, so in this question here, hopefully you realize that this has to deal with compound interest. Okay, now what makes this question a little tricky actually is that it's asking for a common ratio R, but in this formula there is another R, which is separate altogether. Okay, so what you have to try to realize is that there's an original amount, a present value, and it keeps on getting multiplied by some value if you were to use this formula over and over and over again. Like for example, if it was 5 years times this value, let's call it x times x times x times x, which is why it's geometric. Okay, so because in the question it's only for 1 year, n would be equal to 1, and we're only looking at this component, which would be your r, not this r here, not the interest rate, but the common ratio r. Okay, so what would make it a little hard is if you want to write r equals this formula, well, you'll have 2 r's in your equation, which can get a little confusing. So maybe instead, don't write the formula again, just substitute in the correct numbers. So what I mean is, like, don't write this formula if it confuses you. Okay, so it's going to be 1 plus the r in the formula, which is the interest, so 5.5% over 100, over k is quarterly, so 4, all to the power of 4. Now remember, n equals 1, okay, so because it's just for 1 year, at the end of each year. Okay, and this would give you your R, your common ratio value. Okay, so just getting our calculator. This is 1 plus control divide 5.5 times 100 over 4. I like to use the fraction button because you can make a careless mistake here if you don't use it and you do divide, it might multiply by 4 instead. So I just always like to avoid using computer notation, if you will. Okay, so that right there is 1.056 to 4 significant figures. Do pay attention to this. To the second time in this exam that they've already had it not to 3 significant figures, so you don't want to lose careless mistakes. So 1.056 is R. Okay, part B, it's doubling up. All right, so part B, I'm going to, in this time, just write this formula down. FV equals PV times 1. Okay, I'm going to use the previous number 5.5 instead of R, just to not make that confusing again. Okay, and the difference here is we're looking for the number of years, so it's 4n. So it should be like this. Okay, now keep in mind that forget that. I'm just going to move on. Okay, so present value equals future value equals present value times this, but we know it's going to double. So it's going to be 2 PV equals PV because the present value will double to become 2 times PV. Okay, now 1 plus 5.5, this, all of this to the power of 4 is equal to 1.056. Okay, so we already know that's 1.056 and it's just to the power of n. Okay, so we can leave it like that. We can divide both sides by PV to get 2 equals 1 times 1.056 to the power of n. Of course, this 1 wasn't necessary. Okay, now we can actually use logarithms here. You could use nsolve on your calculator, but this time I will show the work. So we have logarithm 1.056 is the base of 2 equals n. And I think I've done that correctly. 1.056 to the power of n equals 2. Yes. Okay. So now we can just, let's go to our calculator. Log. Let me get the actual. I'm right, not there. Where am I? Log. I can't see it. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm stuck. Okay, control there we go. Okay, and I'm going to use the exact one, and this was 2, so it is 12.6. So n is equal to 12.7. Okay, so let's go back to the question, and it said that it's from which year? So from 2022. So that would just take us to year 2032. Okay, now there are other ways you can do this question. For example, you could have just used nsolve the whole time, And this would have been 2 equals, we can just use this above here, we'll put it to the power of n, okay, and you also get that. Now there is another way, a way that I'm not too familiar with, but I often avoid this, but I'll show you. Finance solver, okay, and I've already put in the numbers here, but let's say this was not there. You can put in 5.5, -1, 2 is quarterly, so 4 down there, then you come up here, hit enter, now you get 50.756. Now you have to be careful here, okay, because you have to know how to use this. So 50.756, and divided by 4 because it was quarterly, so it's actually 12.689 years. Okay, so that one can be a little tricky if you're not familiar with it. All right, and just really quickly looking at the mark scheme, that's that. Part B, they actually don't even use logarithms, they just magically get the answer. I think they magically end solve it themselves, who knows. But in any case, yeah, there's all the work for that. Okay.